The crack of a gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Promise Creek as Amelia Montgomery pressed herself against the weathered wall of the general store, her heart hammering against her ribs. April 1875 had arrived with an unexpected ferocity in this corner of the Wyoming Territory, and so had the bounty hunters trailing her brother. "You ain't seen the last of us, Montgomery." A gruff voice bellowed from down the street, followed by the thunder of hoofbeats disappearing into the distance. Amelia closed her eyes, exhaling slowly as she stepped away from the wall, brushing dust from her faded blue dress. 3 years as a schoolteacher in this frontier town had earned her respect, but her brother's trouble had found her nonetheless. The townsfolk who had once greeted her warmly now watched with wary eyes as she made her way down the boardwalk. She straightened her shoulders, refusing to cower. At 26, Amelia had already weathered more storms than most. The death of her husband Thomas during a stagecoach robbery 4 years ago had nearly broken her, but she'd rebuilt her life piece by piece, finding purpose in educating the children of Promise Creek. As she rounded the corner toward the schoolhouse, a horse and rider appeared suddenly in her path. She stumbled backward, nearly losing her footing until a strong hand caught her elbow. "Whoa there, madam, didn't mean to startle you." Amelia looked up into the face of a man she'd never seen before. Sun-bronzed skin, eyes the color of a summer storm, and a slight smile that didn't quite reach those watchful eyes. He wore a weathered leather vest over a faded blue shirt, a Stetson pulled low over his brow, and a gun belt that had seen its share of use. "You're new to town," she stated, pulling her arm from his grip. "Just passing through." He tipped his hat. "Yates Blackwood at your service, Mr. Blackwood?" She nodded curtly. "I'd appreciate it if you'd watch where you're riding. These streets may not be as refined as whatever city you hail from, but we do observe basic courtesies." His smile widened, genuine this time. "Born in a saddle, madam, never much cared for cities." He dismounted in one fluid motion. "Sounds like there was some trouble here just now." "Nothing that concerns a passerby." She moved to step around him. "Those were Barton's men, weren't they?" His words stopped her cold. "I've been tracking them for 3 states, nasty bunch." Amelia turned slowly. "What's your business with them?" "U.S. Marshal." He didn't reach for a badge and she didn't ask to see one. "Heard they were hunting someone in these parts, a Montgomery." "My brother," she admitted reluctantly. "Daniel's made poor choices, but he's not the criminal they make him out to be." Yates studied her, his expression unreadable. "And you'd be?" "Amelia Montgomery. I teach at the schoolhouse." She gestured down the street. "If you'll excuse me, I have lessons to prepare." "Mind if I walk with you?" He gathered his horse's reins. "I've got questions that need answers, and I suspect you've got some of your own." She hesitated, then nodded. As they walked, the marshal's presence beside her drew curious glances from townsfolk going about their morning business. "How long have they been coming around?" he asked, his voice low. 3 weeks. At first they just asked questions. Today was the first time they've fired shots." She kept her eyes forward. "Daniel isn't here. I haven't seen him in over a year. They think differently. They're wrong." They reached the whitewashed schoolhouse at the edge of town. Amelia paused at the steps, turning to face him. "What exactly is my brother accused of?" "Stage robbery near Cheyenne. 2 men killed." She shook her head. "Daniel's foolish, but he's no killer." Most sisters would say the same. There was no judgment in his tone, just a statement of fact. "Most sisters haven't buried a husband killed in just such a robbery," she countered, her voice steady despite the pain that flared in her chest. "I know what that loss feels like. I wouldn't defend someone capable of inflicting it on others." Something shifted in Yates's expression, respect, perhaps, or surprise. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Montgomery." "Miss," she corrected. "I stopped using Mrs. when I buried Thomas." "Well, Miss Montgomery, I aim to find the truth about your brother. If he's innocent, as you say, I'll help clear his name. If not..." He left the consequence unspoken. "They'll be back," she said, glancing toward town. "Barton's men, I know." He tied his horse to the hitching post. "I'll be staying at the hotel. Lock your doors tonight." "I always do," she replied, then paused. "Marshal Blackwood, thank you for the warning." He nodded once before walking away, his spurs jingling softly with each step. Amelia watched him go, a strange mixture of apprehension and relief settling over her. A lawman in town might deter Barton's gang, but it also meant the net was closing around Daniel if he was even still alive. Inside the empty schoolroom, she moved to her desk and sank into her chair. From the drawer, she withdrew a tattered letter that had arrived 3 months ago. Daniel's handwriting, hurried and slanting, promised he'd made a discovery that would change everything. He'd be coming to see her soon, he wrote, but Daniel hadn't come, and now men with guns were searching for him. The school bell rang discordantly as the door swung open. Amelia quickly tucked the letter away as Marshal Blackwood stepped inside, removing his hat. "One more question, Miss Montgomery. Does the name Virgil Hale mean anything to you?" She frowned. "No, should it?" "He was riding with the gang that robbed the stage where your brother was supposedly spotted." He watched her face carefully. "He was found dead 2 weeks ago near the Colorado border, shot in the back." Amelia felt cold despite the spring warmth. "And you think Daniel?" "I think someone's tying up loose ends. Your brother could be running from the law, or he could be running for his life." He placed his hat back on his head. "Either way, you're caught in the middle." As he turned to leave, she called after him, "Marshal, what happens when you find my brother?" He paused at the doorway. "That depends entirely on what I learn between now and then." The door closed behind him, leaving Amelia alone with her thoughts and the growing certainty that her carefully constructed life in Promise Creek was about to crumble around her. The next morning, Amelia arrived at the schoolhouse earlier than usual. Sleep had evaded her, leaving her thoughts to tumble like weeds in a prairie wind. She'd spent hours staring at her ceiling, listening for hoofbeats or footsteps that never came. She was arranging books on the shelves when the door opened. She turned, expecting one of her eager early arrivals, but instead found Marshal Blackwood filling the doorway. "Good morning," she said, setting down a primer. "I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon." "Thought you should know Barton himself rode in last night with 4 more men." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "They've taken rooms at the saloon." Amelia's fingers tightened around the edge of a shelf. "Did they say what they want?" "Not to me." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "But the bartender heard them talking. They're convinced Daniel's coming to meet you." "That's absurd. I told you I know what you told me." His eyes held hers. "What I need to know is what you didn't tell me." She turned away, busying herself with the books. "I don't know what you mean, Miss Montgomery." His voice softened. "Amelia, these men aren't just bounty hunters. Barton works for the Sutton Rail Company. Whatever your brother's involved in, it's big enough for them to send professional gunmen after him." She stilled, then slowly faced him. "How do you know who they work for?" "Because I've been tracking Sutton's enforcers for months. They operate outside the law, but with enough money behind them that most lawmen look the other way." A muscle in his jaw tightened. "I don't. And I'm supposed to just trust you." "A marshal who conveniently appears just when these men start getting violent." She shook her head. "For all I know, you could be working with them." Yates reached inside his vest and withdrew a folded paper, handing it to her. It was a telegram from the U.S. Marshal's office in Denver, confirming his assignment to investigate corruption within Sutton Rail Company. "I'm not here by chance, Miss Montgomery. I've been following Barton's gang since they killed a witness under federal protection in Denver." He took back the telegram. "Your brother may have information that could help my investigation." Amelia hesitated, then walked to her desk. From the drawer, she took Daniel's letter and handed it to Yates. "This came 3 months ago. It's the last I heard from him." Yates read it carefully. "A discovery that will change everything," he quoted. Any idea what he meant? No. Daniel was always chasing one scheme or another after the war, but he sounded different this time, almost afraid. She reclaimed the letter. If he found something that implicated Sutton, it would explain why they're after him, and why they're watching you. Yates moved to the window, peering out at the street. They'll make their move soon, either to use you as bait or to question you themselves. What do you suggest? I can't simply abandon my students. You won't have to. He turned back to her. I've spoken with the sheriff. He's agreed to keep a deputy near the school during the day, and I'll escort you home this afternoon. The entire town will be gossiping by sunset, she said with a wry smile. Let them, it might make Barton think twice about approaching you directly. He studied her face. You're handling this remarkably well. I've learned that falling apart rarely solves problems. She smoothed her skirts. When Thomas died, I spent months in a fog of grief. It changed nothing, helped no one. I won't make that mistake again. You've buried love once, Yates observed quietly. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred souls who had both seen more than their share of loss. The moment was broken by the sound of children's voices approaching the schoolhouse. Yates moved toward the door. I'll be back at 4 o'clock, he said. Try to act normally. If Daniel does try to contact you, don't meet him alone. After he left, Amelia took a deep breath, composing herself as her students began filing in. Throughout the day, she maintained a facade of calm, though her eyes frequently drifted to the window where she could see Sheriff Collins's deputy lounging against a tree. By afternoon, news of Marshal Blackwood's arrival had spread through town, along with speculation about his interest in the schoolteacher. Amelia overheard whispers among her older students and silenced them with a stern look. True to his word, Yates appeared as she was dismissing class. He stood at the back of the room, hat in hand, nodding politely to the curious children who stared as they filed past him. Any trouble? He asked when they were alone. None, though I've apparently become the subject of considerable interest. She gathered her books. Mrs. Wilson from the dress shop made a special trip to bring me a catalog just so she could inspect you through the window. A hint of a smile tugged at his mouth. Small towns, indeed. She reached for her shawl, but he was already there, lifting it from the peg and draping it around her shoulders. His hands lingered briefly, warm through the thin fabric. Thank you, she murmured, suddenly aware of how close he stood. My pleasure. He stepped back. Ready, as they walked through town, Amelia was acutely conscious of the eyes following them. Yates seemed oblivious, maintaining a respectful distance beside her while his gaze constantly scanned their surroundings. You're making the town matrons positively giddy, she said under her breath. Nothing excites them more than the prospect of marrying off the spinster schoolteacher. Is that how you see yourself, a spinster? There was genuine curiosity in his question. It's what happens when you're 26 and widowed in a town where eligible men are scarce. She glanced at him. What about you, Marshal? Left a wife somewhere while you chase outlaws? No wife. His expression closed slightly. This job doesn't lend itself to family life. They were passing the saloon when the batwing doors swung open. 5 men emerged, led by a tall figure with a silver-streaked beard and cold eyes. Barton. Amelia recognized him from descriptions Daniel had given years ago. Yates casually shifted, placing himself between Amelia and the men. His hand didn't move toward his gun, but his posture changed subtly, coiled and ready. Afternoon, gentlemen, he called, his voice pleasant but carrying an undercurrent of steel. Barton's eyes narrowed as he took in the marshal's badge gleaming on Yates's vest. Marshal. He nodded curtly before his gaze slid to Amelia. Miss Montgomery, I presume. I've been hoping to speak with you about your brother. My brother isn't here, Mr. Barton. She met his gaze steadily. And I have nothing to say to you. Surprise flickered across Barton's face, quickly replaced by a calculating look. You know who I am. Interesting. Your reputation precedes you, Yates interjected smoothly. Now, if you'll excuse us, I'm escorting the lady home. Of course. Barton stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. But this conversation isn't over, Miss Montgomery. Family's important. I'd hate to see you suffer for your brother's mistakes. The threat hung in the air as Yates guided Amelia past the group. She could feel Barton's eyes on her back until they turned the corner. That man is dangerous, she said quietly. Yes, he is. Yates's hand rested lightly at the small of her back. But so am I. When they reached her small house at the edge of town, Yates insisted on checking inside before allowing her to enter. He moved through the rooms with practiced efficiency, checking windows and doors. It's secure enough, he said when he returned to the front room, but I don't like the idea of you staying here alone tonight. "I've been alone for 4 years, Marshal," she reminded him. "I can manage one more night." Barton made a direct threat. That changes things. He looked around the modest home. "Is there somewhere you could stay, a friend in town, perhaps, and put them at risk?" "No," she shook her head. "This is my problem." Yates ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I could post a deputy outside and announce to everyone, including Barton, that I'm afraid." She squared her shoulders. "No, I have my husband's shotgun. I know how to use it." They argued for several more minutes before reaching a compromise. Yates would return after dark to check on her, and she would keep the shotgun loaded and ready. As she showed him out, he paused at the door. "Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or Sheriff Collins." "I will." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you, Marshal Yates," he corrected. "If I'm going to be risking my neck for you, you might as well use my given name." "Yates," she repeated softly. "Then you must call me Amelia." Their eyes met again, and this time the connection lingered. Amelia felt a flutter in her chest that she hadn't experienced in years, a sensation both welcome and terrifying. "I'll be back at nightfall," he promised, breaking the moment. "Stay safe, Amelia." After he left, she secured the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath to steady herself. She had no business feeling anything for this man. He would solve his case and move on, while she remained in Promise Creek with her memories and her students. Still, as she moved about the house preparing her evening meal, she found herself listening for hoofbeats and watching the setting sun with an anticipation that had nothing to do with fear. Night fell over Promise Creek, the darkness broken only by scattered lamplight from windows and the occasional lantern swinging from a hitching post outside the saloon. Amelia sat at her kitchen table, grading arithmetic exercises by lamplight, the shotgun propped against the wall within reach. The soft knock at her door came just as she was setting aside the last paper. She moved cautiously to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. Yates stood on her porch, his face half shadowed by his hat. "It's me," he called softly, sensing her presence. Amelia unbolted the door, relief washing over her as she opened it. "You came. I said I would." He stepped inside, removing his hat. His hair was damp, and she realized it had started raining. "I made coffee," she offered, bolting the door behind him. "It should still be hot." "Much obliged." He followed her to the kitchen, his spurs jingling softly on the wooden floor. As she poured the coffee, Amelia was acutely aware of his presence filling her small home. Few men had crossed this threshold since Thomas died. Certainly none had sat at her table watching her with those intent gray eyes. "Any sign of Barton's men?" she asked, setting a steaming cup before him. "They're keeping to the saloon for now." He wrapped his hands around the cup. "But they've been asking questions about you all over town." "What kind of questions?" "Whether you live alone, if you get many visitors." His jaw tightened. "If you've mentioned your brother recently." Amelia sank into the chair across from him. "They think he'll come here." "Yes, and they're willing to wait." He sipped his coffee. "Which means we need to consider our options. You can't stay here indefinitely with them watching." "I can't leave either. My students need a teacher who's alive," he interrupted gently. "Barton isn't known for his patience. Eventually, he'll decide to use more direct methods to get information." The rain intensified, drumming against the roof and windows. In the momentary silence between them, a floorboard creaked in the back of the house. Yates was on his feet instantly, gun drawn. He motioned for Amelia to stay down as he moved silently toward the sound. She reached for the shotgun, heart pounding. A shadow appeared in the hallway. "Amelia," a hoarse voice called. She froze. "Daniel," her brother stumbled into the kitchen, soaking wet and deathly pale. Blood darkened his left sleeve, and his face was gaunt beneath several days' growth of beard. "Thank God," he gasped, then noticed Yates with his gun aimed squarely at Daniel's chest. "Who the hell is this?" "U.S. Marshal Blackwood," Yates answered, not lowering his weapon. "You've caused quite a stir, Mr. Montgomery." Daniel swayed on his feet. "Amelia, I need help." She rushed to her brother's side, supporting him as he sagged against her. "He's been shot," she told Yates. "Please put the gun away." After a moment's hesitation, Yates holstered his weapon and moved to help her get Daniel to a chair. "When did this happen?" 2 days ago, Daniel grimaced as they eased him down. Barton's men caught up to me near the river. I got away, but not before they winged me. Amelia hurried to fetch clean cloths and her medical supplies. How did you get past them tonight? Came in through the back country. Been watching the house since yesterday. His eyes flicked to Yates, saw him coming and going. Figured I'd wait until he was here in case Barton's men were watching. Smart, Yates conceded, helping Amelia cut away the blood-soaked sleeve. But foolish to come at all. They're all over town looking for you. Had no choice. Daniel hissed as Amelia began cleaning the wound. They murdered Virgil. They'll kill anyone who knows what we found. Yates's eyes sharpened. And what exactly did you find, Mr. Montgomery? Daniel looked between the marshal and his sister. Can I trust him, Amelia? Yes, she said without hesitation, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. He's been protecting me. Daniel reached inside his sodden jacket with his good arm and withdrew an oilskin packet. Land deeds, forged by Sutton Rail to claim they had right-of-way through Arapaho Territory. They're building their new line on stolen land, and they bribed government officials to look the other way. Yates took the packet, examining the documents inside. This is federal evidence of fraud and corruption. How did you get it? Virgil worked as a clerk in Sutton's Denver office. He saw them filing fake deeds and made copies. Daniel winced as Amelia began bandaging his arm. We were going to sell them back to Sutton, I admit that, but then we realized how big this was, how many people were involved. So you decided to do the right thing? Yates's tone was skeptical. No, Daniel admitted. We decided to ask for more money, but Sutton sent Barton instead of cash. Killed Virgil, would have killed me too if I hadn't gotten away. He looked at his sister. I'm sorry, Amelia, I never meant to bring this to your door. It's too late for that now, she said, tying off the bandage. You need rest, and we need to figure out how to get you and these documents safely to the proper authorities. We can't stay here, Yates said. Barton may have men watching the house. Now that Daniel's here, they'll make their move. Where then? Amelia asked. The sheriff might be in Sutton's pocket too, Yates cut in. We can't risk it. Daniel struggled to his feet. I know a place, old mining cabin about 10 miles north. Virgil and I used it as a hideout. Barton doesn't know about it. You're in no condition to ride, Amelia protested. We don't have a choice, sis. Daniel squeezed her hand. You're in danger as long as I'm here. Yates made a quick decision. We'll go tonight under cover of the storm. Barton's men will be keeping dry, not expecting anyone to travel in this weather. Amelia looked between them. All of us. You can't stay here alone, Yates said firmly. Once they realize Daniel's been here, they'll come for you. And I need you both where I can protect you until I can get those documents to a federal judge. The reality of the situation sank in. Amelia nodded slowly. I'll pack some supplies. As she moved about the house gathering food, clothing, and medical supplies, she could hear the low voices of Yates and her brother in the kitchen. By the time she returned, they had formed a plan. I'll bring my horse around back, Yates said. Daniel can ride with me, you take your mare. We'll stay off the main trails, head north through the woods. Amelia changed into her riding clothes, a split skirt and sturdy boots she kept from her days on her father's ranch. She strapped Thomas's revolver to her waist, a decision that raised Yates's eyebrows but earned a nod of approval. They slipped out through the back door into the driving rain. Yates disappeared to retrieve his horse while Amelia helped Daniel to the small stable where she kept her mare, Penny. You trust this marshal awfully quick, Daniel observed as she saddled the horse. He's a good man, she replied simply, and right now he's our only hope of getting out of this alive. Daniel studied his sister's face in the lantern light. There's something more there, isn't there? Don't be ridiculous, she said, though she couldn't meet his eyes. I've known him barely 2 days. Sometimes that's all it takes, Daniel said softly. You deserve happiness, Amelia. After Thomas, I've buried love once, she cut him off. I'm not looking to dig another grave. The conversation ended as Yates returned, leading his stallion. The rain had slackened to a steady drizzle, but the night remained dark, clouds obscuring the moon and stars. Ready? Yates asked, helping Daniel mount behind the saddle. Amelia swung onto Penny's back with practiced ease. Ready. They rode out, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the pools of lamplight that spilled from windows. At the edge of town, Yates led them into the pines, following a game trail that wound north into the hills. The journey was slow and treacherous. The rain-slicked trail forced them to proceed at a walk, and Daniel's condition worsened as the night wore on. Twice they stopped to allow Amelia to check his wound, which had begun bleeding again. "He's burning with fever," she told Yates during their second stop, her voice tight with worry. "How much further?" "Another hour, maybe two." Yates glanced at the eastern sky where the faintest lightning hinted at approaching dawn. "We need to reach the cabin before daylight." They pushed on, Daniel slumped against Yates's back, drifting in and out of consciousness. Amelia rode alongside, her eyes constantly returning to her brother's pale face. The sky was turning from black to deep blue when they finally reached a small clearing where a dilapidated cabin stood beside a swift-flowing creek. Yates dismounted first, helping Daniel down and supporting him as Amelia rushed ahead to open the door. Inside, the cabin was dusty but dry. A crude bed stood against one wall, a table and chairs in the center, and a stone fireplace dominated the far end. Yates eased Daniel onto the bed while Amelia hurried to light a fire. "I'll tend to the horses," Yates said once Daniel was settled. "Then we'll need to talk about our next move." Alone with her brother, Amelia worked quickly to remove his wet clothes and redress his wound. The bullet had gone straight through his upper arm, but infection had set in. Without proper medicine, his chances were poor. When Yates returned, she was bathing Daniel's forehead with cool water from the creek. "He needs a doctor," she said without looking up. "The nearest one is back in Promise Creek," Yates replied, setting their supplies on the table. "I can't risk going back there yet." "Then he'll die," she said, her voice breaking. Yates moved to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "There's an old medicine woman who lives about 5 miles from here, half Arapaho. She's helped me before when I've been injured. I'll go to her once it's fully light." Amelia looked up at him, hope warring with fear in her eyes. "You'll come back, I promise." His hand moved to her cheek, thumb gently wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Get some rest, I'll keep watch." But she couldn't rest. Even after Yates insisted she take the only chair and wrapped his coat around her shoulders, sleep eluded her. She dozed fitfully, waking at every sound: the crackle of the fire, the wind in the pines, Daniel's labored breathing. As dawn broke fully, Yates prepared to leave for the medicine woman's home. He checked his gun, tucked the oilskin packet securely inside his vest, and turned to Amelia. "Bar the door behind me," he instructed. "Don't open it for anyone but me. I'll knock 3 times, pause, then twice more." She nodded, walking him to the door. "Be careful." He hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a swift, gentle kiss to her forehead. "I will." After he rode away, Amelia secured the door as instructed and returned to Daniel's side. His fever had worsened, his breathing shallow. She continued bathing his brow, speaking softly to him, urging him to hold on. "Yates will bring help," she promised, though she wasn't sure Daniel could hear her. "Just stay with me." Hours passed. The sun climbed high, then began its descent. Amelia's worry grew with each passing minute. Had Yates encountered Barton's men? Had the medicine woman refused to help? Or worse, had he abandoned them, taking the evidence to save himself? No, she wouldn't believe that. Something in her trusted him completely, despite the brevity of their acquaintance. It was a feeling she couldn't explain, a certainty that transcended logic. The sun was setting when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Amelia grabbed the shotgun and moved to the window, peering carefully through a gap in the shutters. Relief flooded her as she recognized Yates, accompanied by an elderly woman riding a spotted pony. She unbarred the door as they dismounted. "This is 2 Rivers," Yates said as the woman entered, carrying a worn leather bag. "She's agreed to help." 2 Rivers moved directly to Daniel, her weathered face impassive as she examined his wound. She spoke in a mixture of English and Arapaho, directing Amelia to heat water while she unpacked various herbs and powders from her bag. For the next hour, the old woman worked over Daniel, cleaning the wound with a poultice that smelled of sage and pine, then preparing a bitter tea which she forced between his lips. All the while, she chanted softly, her gnarled hands moving in intricate patterns over his body. Yates stood by the window, keeping watch, though he frequently glanced back at the proceedings. When Two Rivers finally sat back, indicating she had done all she could, he approached. "Will he live?" he asked directly. "If his spirit is strong," she replied. "The fever will break tonight, or it will take him." She left detailed instructions with Amelia for continuing the treatment, then accepted Yates's offer to escort her home before dark. As they left, the old woman paused, laying a hand on Amelia's arm. "You have known great sorrow," she said, her dark eyes penetrating. "But joy waits if you are brave enough to reach for it." Her gaze flicked meaningfully to Yates, who was adjusting his saddle, then back to Amelia with a knowing smile. Before Amelia could respond, Two Rivers moved away, mounting her pony with surprising agility for her age. "I'll be back before full dark," Yates promised as he swung into his saddle. "Keep the shotgun close." The cabin felt eerily quiet after they left. Amelia busied herself preparing the medicines Two Rivers had left, then settled beside Daniel to wait. His breathing seemed easier now, his face less flushed, but he remained unconscious. True to his word, Yates returned as twilight deepened into night. He carried fresh game, 2 rabbits he'd snared, and news. "Barton's men are searching the hills," he said as he helped her prepare the rabbits for cooking. "They found your house empty this morning and have spread out looking for tracks. The rain helped us there, but they're persistent." "How close are they?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, too close for comfort. "About 3 miles south." He added wood to the fire. "We should be safe tonight, but we'll need to move on tomorrow if Daniel's able." "And if he isn't," Yates met her eyes across the flames. "Then I'll take the evidence and draw them away. You'll stay here with Daniel until he's strong enough to travel." "No," she said immediately. "We stay together." "Amelia, be reasonable. If Barton finds us all here," I said no. She set down the knife she'd been using, her hands trembling slightly. "I won't lose another person she stopped abruptly. "Another person you what?" he asked softly. She turned away, busying herself with the cooking pot. "Another person I care about," she finished, her voice barely audible. Yates moved around the fire, gently turning her to face him. "Amelia." His voice was low, intense. "I've been a lawman for 12 years. I've learned to read people, to keep my distance, to trust no one but myself. But with you—" He shook his head as if puzzled by his own feelings. "With you, everything's different. We hardly know each other," she whispered, though she made no move to step away from his touch. "I know enough." His hands framed her face. "I know you're brave and loyal. I know you've suffered, but haven't let it harden your heart. I know that from the moment I saw you, I couldn't look away." Amelia's heart raced. It was too soon, too sudden, and yet it felt more real than anything had in years. Yates, a low groan from the bed interrupted them. Daniel was stirring, his eyes fluttering open. "Water," he rasped. They moved apart, the moment broken as they hurried to Daniel's side. Amelia held a cup to her brother's lips while Yates supported his head. "The fever's breaking," Yates observed, noting the sheen of sweat on Daniel's brow. "Thank God," Amelia murmured. Daniel's eyes focused on Yates. "The documents," he said urgently, "are they safe?" "Yes, still with me." Yates patted his vest. "Rest easy, we'll get them where they need to go." Daniel relaxed slightly, then looked at his sister. "I heard voices. Were you arguing?" A flush crept up Amelia's cheeks. "No. Just discussing our plans." "Good." Daniel's eyes drifted closed again. "Can't have you two at odds, need to stick together." They exchanged a glance over Daniel's head, a silent acknowledgement that their conversation would have to wait. There were more pressing concerns: Daniel's recovery, Barton's pursuit, and the evidence that could bring down powerful men. As night deepened, they shared the rabbit stew in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Amelia took the first watch while Yates stretched out near the fire, his gun within easy reach. She sat by the window, shotgun across her lap, watching the moonlight filtering through the pines. Outside, an owl called, its lonely cry echoing through the forest. Inside, the rhythmic breathing of the 2 men, one her brother, the other a virtual stranger who somehow felt like anything but filled the small space. In the quiet darkness, Amelia allowed herself to acknowledge the truth she'd been avoiding. Against all reason, against her own careful barriers, she was falling in love with Marshal Yates Blackwood. The realization terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "I've buried love once," she whispered to herself in the darkness, remembering Thomas's laugh, his gentle hands, the future they'd planned together. But perhaps, just perhaps, she could find the courage to love again if they survived what was coming. The next morning brought both hope and renewed danger. Daniel was considerably stronger, the fever gone, though he remained weak. Over a breakfast of leftover rabbit and coffee, they discussed their options. "We need to get these documents to Judge Halloran in Denver," Yates said, spreading a worn map on the table. "He's one of the few federal judges I trust implicitly, but Barton's men will be watching all the main routes. What about going north to Cheyenne, then taking the train east to Denver?" Amelia suggested. Yates shook his head. "Sutton owns half the railroad workers. We'd be spotted before we cleared the station." "There's another way," Daniel said, pushing himself up on his good arm. "Through Arapaho land. They've been fighting Sutton's expansion for years. They might help us if they knew what we're carrying." "That's risky," Yates frowned. "The Army patrols those borders heavily." Two Rivers has family among the northern Arapaho," Daniel persisted. "She could arrange safe passage." Yates considered this. "It's possible. But it would mean another day here while I fetch her again." "No need." Daniel nodded toward the window. "Looks like she decided to come back on her own." Amelia turned to see the old woman approaching on her spotted pony, moving at a leisurely pace through the trees. Yates went out to meet her, speaking with her briefly before escorting her inside. Two Rivers examined Daniel with evident satisfaction. "Your spirit is strong," she told him. "The sickness has left you." "Thanks to your medicine," Daniel replied respectfully. While Amelia changed Daniel's bandages, Yates explained their dilemma to Two Rivers. The old woman listened intently, her dark eyes unreadable. "The papers you carry," she said when he finished. "They prove Sutton stole our people's land." "Yes," Yates confirmed. "With these, the government would have to honor the original treaties." Two Rivers nodded slowly. "Then I will help you. My nephew is a scout for the Northern Band. He can guide you through the back country to the railroad at Fort Laramie. From there, you can reach Denver without passing through Sutton's territory." "When can he come?" Yates asked. "Tonight, when the moon rises." She rose to leave. "Be ready to ride hard. The journey is not easy, especially for one who is wounded." After she departed, they spent the day preparing. Daniel practiced walking, regaining his strength while Amelia packed their meager supplies, and Yates scouted the surrounding area for signs of pursuit. He returned mid-afternoon with troubling news. "Barton's men have split up. They're combing these hills systematically. I found tracks about a mile east fresh, maybe 6 hours old." "We need to leave now," Daniel urged. "We can't wait for nightfall." "No," Yates decided. "Moving in daylight makes us too visible, and we need Two Rivers' nephew to guide us through Arapaho territory. We wait." The tension in the cabin mounted as the afternoon waned. Every sound from the forest made them freeze, listening for approaching hoofbeats. Yates kept his rifle ready, moving between windows, watching. As the sun began to set, Amelia found herself standing beside him at the western window. The dying light painted the forest in gold and shadow, beautiful despite their precarious situation. "If we make it through this," Yates said quietly, his eyes on the tree line, "what will you do? Go back to teaching in Promise Creek?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm not sure I can go back to that life now." She glanced at him. "What about you? Back to chasing outlaws?" "That depends." He turned to face her fully. "On what?" "On whether I have a reason to stop running." His voice was low, meant only for her. "Amelia, when this is over," the sound of a branch snapping outside silenced him. Yates motioned for quiet, raising his rifle. Through the window, they could see movement among the trees, not from the direction of the trail, but from the east. "Barton," Yates whispered. "Get Daniel down, away from the windows." Amelia helped her brother to the floor beside the bed as Yates took up position near the door. Outside, voices became audible, men discussing strategy surrounding the cabin. 6 of them, at least, Yates said grimly. "Too many to fight off." The back window, Daniel suggested. We could slip out while they're positioning themselves, but Yates shook his head. They'll have that covered too. Barton's too smart to leave an escape route. Then what do we do? Amelia asked, the shotgun steady in her hands despite her fear. Before Yates could answer, a voice called from outside. Marshal Blackwood, I know you're in there. Come out and bring the Montgomery siblings with you. Let's discuss this like civilized people. Barton, Daniel confirmed, his face pale. Don't trust him, Yates. I don't. Yates's mind was working rapidly. But we need time. Two Rivers' nephew won't arrive for hours yet. He moved to the door. What do you want, Barton? He called through the thick wood. Just what belongs to my employer, came the reply. The documents Montgomery stole and Montgomery himself to face justice for his crimes. And what about his sister and me? Yates asked. Do we just walk away? A chuckle floated through the air. That would be the sensible choice, Marshal. This isn't your fight. The woman hasn't seen anything worth dying for. You could both ride out of here free and clear. Yates glanced back at Amelia and Daniel. He's lying, he said softly. He can't let any of us go now. Then we fight, Amelia said resolutely. No, Yates's expression changed as an idea formed. We need to split them up, create confusion. He moved to Daniel. Can you ride? If I have to, Daniel answered. Good. Yates explained his plan quickly, his voice barely above a whisper. It was desperate, risky, but it was their only chance. Turning back to the door, he raised his voice. I need time to consider your offer, Barton. Give me until sunset. You have 15 minutes, Marshal, Barton called back. Then we come in shooting. They moved with quiet urgency. Yates helped Daniel mount his stallion at the back of the cabin, hidden from Barton's view by the structure itself. He handed Daniel the oilskin packet. Head straight west, he instructed. Two Rivers said her nephew would come from that direction. Find him, get these documents to Denver. Don't look back, no matter what you hear. Daniel gripped Yates's shoulder with his good hand. Take care of my sister. With my life, Yates promised. Inside, Amelia was gathering only what they could carry on one horse. She secured her revolver and loaded the shotgun, her movements quick and precise. Ready? Yates asked when he returned. She nodded, though fear was evident in her eyes. Will this work? It has to. He checked his own weapons. When I start shooting, count to 20, then run for Penny. I'll be right behind you. And if you're not, her voice trembled slightly. He looked at her steadily. Then ride east. Don't stop until you reach Fort Laramie. I won't leave you, she said fiercely. Yes, you will. He took her face in his hands. Promise me. She couldn't speak, could only nod reluctantly. Your time's up, Marshal, Barton shouted from outside. What's your decision? Yates moved to the front window. Taking a deep breath, he aimed at the trees where he'd spotted movement and fired 3 rapid shots. The forest erupted in gunfire. Bullets splintered the cabin walls as Barton's men returned fire. Yates moved between windows, firing strategically, creating the impression of multiple defenders. Go, he shouted to Amelia when he paused to reload. She dashed to the back door, counting under her breath as instructed. Behind her, Yates continued firing, drawing attention to the front of the cabin. At 20, she slipped outside, running low to where Penny was tethered. She mounted quickly, then waited, heart pounding, for Yates to follow. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The gunfire intensified. She heard a cry of pain one of Barton's men hit, then the sound of breaking glass. Come on, Yates, she whispered desperately. Finally, he appeared, running in a crouch toward her. He had almost reached Penny when a shot rang out from the side of the cabin. Yates staggered, clutching his side, but kept moving. Go, he gasped as he swung up behind her, blood seeping between his fingers. Ride. Amelia urged Penny forward, crashing through the underbrush away from the cabin. Behind them, shouts of confusion rose as Barton's men realized their quarry was escaping. More shots followed, bullets whizzing through the trees around them. They rode hard, Yates's arm around Amelia's waist, his breath ragged in her ear. He directed her with terse commands. Left here, down to the creek, guiding them on a zigzagging course to confuse pursuit. The sun had set completely, darkness enveloping the forest when Yates finally told her to slow. We need to stop, he said, his voice weak. I can't. She felt him slump against her back, his grip loosening. With rising panic, Amelia guided Penny into a small hollow formed by fallen trees and dismounted. Helping Yates down as gently as she could in the faint moonlight, she could see the dark stains spreading across his shirt. "How bad is it?" she asked, helping him sit against a tree trunk. "Been worse," he managed, though his face was gray with pain. "Bullet's still in there, though." Amelia worked quickly, tearing strips from her petticoat to bind the wound. It was a clean shot through his side, missing vital organs but bleeding heavily. "Without proper medical attention, infection would set in soon. We need to keep moving," Yates insisted once she'd finished. "Barton won't give up easily." "You're in no condition to ride," she argued. "Don't have a choice." He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily against the tree. "Daniel will lead them west. We need to head north, try to reach Arapaho Territory by morning." Reluctantly, Amelia helped him back onto Penny. She mounted in front, supporting Yates's weight as they continued north at a slower pace. The night deepened around them, stars appearing overhead as clouds drifted away. They had been riding for perhaps an hour when Yates spoke again, his voice thick with pain. "Amelia, if I don't make it, don't," she interrupted fiercely. "Don't you dare say goodbye to me, Yates Blackwood." "Not goodbye," he murmured against her hair. "Just want you to know, meeting you was worth all of this. Haven't felt this way since, can't remember when." His words sent a rush of emotion through her so powerful it nearly took her breath away. "Then stay with me," she pleaded. "Fight." "We're just beginning." "Yes, madam," he replied, a hint of his usual strength returning to his voice. "Just beginning." They rode through the night, stopping occasionally to rest and check Yates's wound. The bleeding had slowed, but his skin felt hot to the touch, fever setting in. By dawn, they had reached the edge of a broad valley where a river wound through tall grass. Arapaho land, Yates confirmed as they paused on a ridge overlooking the valley. "We should be safe here." But as they began to descend, the sound of hoofbeats approached from behind. Amelia turned to see 3 riders cresting the ridge they had just left. "Barton," Yates said grimly. "Go, Amelia, ride hard for the river." She urged Penny forward, the exhausted horse responding gamely to her urgency. Behind them, their pursuers gained ground, the thunder of hooves growing louder. They were halfway across the valley when a shot rang out. Penny stumbled, wounded but still running. Another shot, and Amelia felt Yates jerk behind her. "Yates," she cried. "Keep going," he gasped. "Almost there." The river loomed ahead, swift flowing and deep. On the opposite bank, a group of mounted figures appeared, Arapaho warriors, watching the pursuit with wary interest. "Help us," Amelia shouted, waving desperately. Whether they understood her words or simply recognized their plight, the warriors responded. Several urged their ponies into the river, riding to intercept them, while others knocked arrows, aiming at the pursuers. Penny reached the river's edge and plunged in without hesitation. The cold water swirled around them as the brave horse fought the current. Behind them, Barton and his men pulled up short as arrows began falling around them. The Arapaho warriors reached them mid-river, helping to guide Penny to the far bank. As they emerged from the water, Yates slumped forward, unconscious. It took 2 warriors to lift him from the horse. "Please," Amelia begged, sliding down from Penny's back. "He's hurt badly." One of the warriors, younger than the rest with intelligent eyes, replied in halting English. "Two Rivers sent word, we wait for you," he gestured to Yates. "We help." Across the river, Barton and his men retreated under the continued threat of arrows, disappearing back over the ridge. For the moment, at least, they were safe. The warriors brought them to their camp, a collection of tipis set in a protected hollow several miles from the river. The women of the tribe took charge of Yates, carrying him into the largest tipi where an elderly medicine man waited. Amelia tried to follow, but was gently held back. "Let him work," the young warrior who spoke English told her. "You rest now." Exhausted beyond measure, she could only nod. A kindly woman led her to a smaller tipi, offering food and clean blankets. Despite her worry for Yates, Amelia's body demanded rest. She fell into a deep sleep, the events of the past days catching up to her at last. She woke to the sound of voices outside. It was late afternoon, the sun slanting low through the tipi entrance. Amelia rose quickly, her muscles protesting after the punishing ride. Outside, she found the camp in a state of animated discussion. The young warrior she learned his name was Running Fox approached her. "Your friend lives," he said simply. "The bullet is removed. He sleeps now." Relief flooded through her. "Can I see him?" Running Fox led her to the medicine man's tipi. Inside, Yates lay on a bed of furs, his torso wrapped in clean bandages. His face was pale but peaceful in sleep, his breathing steady. She knelt beside him, taking his hand gently in hers. "Thank you," she said to the medicine man, who nodded in acknowledgement before leaving them alone. "Amelia," Yates's eyes fluttered open at her touch. "We made it?" "Yes," she smiled through tears of relief. "We're safe with the Arapaho. Barton can't reach us here." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Daniel, no word yet," she admitted. "But Running Fox says Two Rivers' nephew found him. They're taking the evidence to Denver by a different route." Yates relaxed slightly. "Good." His eyes held hers. "I thought I might die without telling you." "Telling me what?" She asked softly, though her heart knew the answer. "That I love you." The words were simple, direct, like the man himself. "I know it's fast, probably foolish, but I've never been more certain of anything." Amelia's breath caught. The walls she'd built around her heart since Thomas's death crumbled completely in that moment. "I love you too," she whispered. "I tried not to, I was so afraid." "I know." He raised a hand to her cheek. "You've buried love once." "Yes," she turned her face to kiss his palm. "But you promised to make it last this time." "And I will." His eyes burned with intensity despite his weakness. "If you'll have me, Amelia Montgomery, I'll spend every day proving that promise." She leaned down, pressing her lips gently to his. The kiss was brief, mindful of his injuries, but filled with the promise of a future neither had dared hope for days ago. They remained with the Arapaho for 2 weeks while Yates recovered. During that time, a messenger arrived from Two Rivers with news. Daniel had reached Denver safely. Judge Halloran had the evidence and had issued warrants for the arrest of Sutton and his accomplices, including Barton. When Yates was strong enough to travel, Running Fox guided them to Fort Laramie, where they caught a train to Denver. Daniel met them at the station, his arm still in a sling but his face alight with triumph. "It's over," he told them as they settled in Judge Halloran's guest house. "Sutton's been arrested, Barton too, trying to flee to Mexico. The land will be returned to the Arapaho, and the government's launching a full investigation into railroad land grants across the territories." "And you?" Amelia asked her brother. "What will you do now?" Daniel smiled sheepishly. "Judge Halloran offered me a position as an investigator for the court. Seems my talent for uncovering secrets might be useful on the right side of the law." The three of them laughed, the sound carefree for the first time in what felt like ages. Later that evening, Yates took Amelia for a walk through the judge's gardens. The summer night was warm, fragrant with roses, peaceful in a way that seemed almost unreal after their ordeal. "I've been thinking," Yates said as they paused beside a small fountain, "about the future." "And?" she prompted when he hesitated. "Judge Halloran wants me to take a position with the federal court here in Denver, supervising marshals, not chasing outlaws myself." He turned to face her. "It would mean settling down, having a home, a life beyond the next case or the next town." Amelia's heart quickened. "Is that what you want? Only if you're part of it." He took both her hands in his. "Amelia, I know we've known each other barely a month. I know it's sudden, but when you find something this real, this right..." He shook his head, searching for words. "I don't want to waste another day wondering what might have been." From his pocket, he withdrew a small ring, a simple gold band with a modest diamond that caught the moonlight. "Will you marry me, Amelia? Build a life with me here in Denver?" Tears sprang to her eyes, but unlike the tears she'd shed in the past 4 years, these were born of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Yates, I will." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Amelia felt the last shadows of grief lifting from her heart. She had buried love once, but life had given her a second chance, unexpected, swift, and more precious for the journey that had brought them together. "I promise you," Yates murmured as he drew her into his arms, "this love will last a lifetime." 3 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Amelia stood before the altar of Denver's finest church in a gown of ivory silk. Daniel stood proudly at her side, ready to give her away. Judge Halloran himself would perform the ceremony, a fitting tribute to the case that had brought them all together. As the music began and she took her first step toward the future, Amelia caught Yates's eye at the altar. The love shining in his face mirrored the certainty in her own heart. She had feared loving again, had built walls to protect herself from further pain. But sometimes, she had learned, the greatest courage wasn't in shutting out the world, but in opening your heart to it once more, in believing that even after the darkest night, dawn would come again. And as she reached Yates and placed her hand in his, Amelia knew with absolute certainty that this time, love would indeed last. 10 years later, Amelia sat on the porch of their home on the outskirts of Denver, watching their children play in the late afternoon sunlight. 8-year-old Thomas, named for the husband she had lost, chased his 6-year-old sister Catherine through the sprawling garden that had become Amelia's pride and joy. Behind her, the screen door creaked as Yates stepped out, home from his day at the federal courthouse. His dark hair was now threaded with silver at the temples, but his eyes still held the same intensity that had captured her heart a decade ago. "How are my favorite people in the world?" he asked, bending to kiss her cheek before settling into the chair beside hers. "Exhausting as ever," she replied with a smile, taking his hand. "Thomas decided he's going to be a marshal like his father. Catherine says she'll be his deputy." Yates laughed. "God help the outlaws of Colorado Territory." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the children's game evolve into an elaborate chase involving imaginary horses and equally imaginary desperados. "Daniel's letter came today," Amelia said after a while. "He's been promoted to chief investigator for the Western District. Says he might come visit this Christmas. Good, it's been too long." Yates squeezed her hand. Two Rivers sent word as well. "The Arapaho Reservation is thriving with the new irrigation system. She says Running Fox is now a council elder." "We should visit them this summer," Amelia suggested. "Show the children where their parents had their great adventure." "Adventure?" Yates raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling being shot at and nearly killed? It brought us together, didn't it?" She leaned against his shoulder. "I wouldn't change a moment of it." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Yates wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever think about him?" he asked quietly. "Thomas." It was a question he rarely asked, respecting the place her first husband held in her heart. But today, perhaps prompted by watching their son who bore Thomas's name, he seemed to need reassurance. "Sometimes," she answered honestly, "but not with sadness anymore, just gratitude for the time we had." She turned to look into his eyes. "And even greater gratitude for the life we've built together. You kept your promise, Yates. This love has lasted." He kissed her then, tenderly, a decade of shared life and love flowing between them. When they parted, their children were racing toward the porch, clamoring for attention, hungry for dinner, bursting with stories of their day's adventures. As the family moved inside to the warmth of their home, Amelia paused in the doorway, looking back at the sunset. She had indeed buried love once, but in doing so, she had made room for a love even deeper and more enduring, a love tempered by loss, strengthened by danger, and made precious by the knowledge that nothing in life was guaranteed except this moment, this breath, this chance to love fully and without reservation. And in that knowledge, she had found not just happiness, but peace.